Pat Weaver was the head of NBC programming, and Pat Weaver had a great idea. He talked to us about doing a weekly show, and I turned it down. I said, no, we're going to get burned out with a weekly show. I won't do that. Well, the interesting thing is that he got the same response from Abbott and Costello and Eddie Cantor. So his idea was, I'll tell you what, here's what we'll do. We'll put you on every 6 weeks. You'll do 8 shows in the season, and you'll do it with Abbott and Costello, Eddie Cantor, Donald O'Connor, Ed Wynn, and that's how the Colgate Comedy Hour started. And I accepted that because, and I had told Dean said, you know, they're talking about 39 weeks. I said, yeah, they're talking about disaster. You don't want to do that. And he respected what my opinion was relative to not burning out. So we did the Colgate Comedy Hour, and we were on against Sullivan on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, and we beat Sullivan 48 times in a row for the 8 years that we did it, or the 7 years we did it. Nobody beat Sullivan. Nobody. Any of the specials that NBC threw at Sullivan, they didn't beat him. Dean and I beat him by 12 points, 13 points, 14 points. All of the Colgate Comedy Hours emanated from either the El Capitan in Los Angeles or the International Theater at Columbus Circle, New York. Well, you see, we were not the ones to get any kind of a gauge from, because we were so hot that anything we did, we had to view it. So in the first Colgate Comedy Hour, we had the largest audience of any of the Colgate Comedy Hours ever had, or ever would have. And it was a tremendous success, and we were getting all kinds of laudatory stuff from the press. And NBC wanted to make another deal with us in another way, and they were throwing telephone numbers at us. And it was very successful. And what we did was we wrote 2 sketches. We did an opening for Martin and Lewis, 2 sketches, 2 songs for Dean, and a wrap-up. And before you knew it, you were into 56-20, and you were out. The workload of getting it all on and getting it in, because we were working live too, was terrific. And, you know, we went off the air at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, and at 9:30 I had a production meeting for the following week. You know what that is, Sam. And it was not for the following week, for the following show, I'm sorry. And it wasn't as tough on us as it was for people that were doing weekly television. But even so, we were doing one every 6 weeks. It still started to bear down on you. But we took most of what Martin Lewis did physically and worked it into the television program. And I was so nuts, and I was out of the rules, and I never hit the marks, and I was into the cameras, and I was the first one to bring the camera to me. I go to it, and I knew the importance of physicality. And we were good together on it. We knew when to pull back and when to feed one another and when to get up close. And it was incredible. I mean, we would do a show and then play on the fur market tour in Texas. And we were playing to 20,000 people in an auditorium every night. 20,000 in Lubbock, 20,000 in San Antonio, 20,000 in Dallas, 20,000 in Houston. Then we'd go back and do another show, or we'd go back to the movies. I mean, we never stopped. We never stopped. And before the break, we had $200 million in contracts the day that we split up. No, because Dean and I never worked blue. We never worked dirty. Everything we did in our act, we could do on television. We extended it, of course, and gave a dimension, because we would do little picayune things, you know, in the act of Martin and Lewis, 90 minutes or 100 minutes on a nightclub stage. We could take all of that and condense it into a sketch and take that piece and put it in here. But there was never any verbotens for us. I'll start with my assistant director, who was Arthur Penn, who became one of the great motion picture directors in the world. I worked with Bud Yorkin and Norman Lear, and we had Harry Crane and Artie Phillips and Mel Tolkien and Danny Arnold Ed Simmons, yes. Yeah, Ed Simmons and Norman Lear were a team then. And they all went on to do wonderful work. Uh, uh, we had a marvelous staff of people. We had marvelous guest stars when guest stars were important to television. We had Ethel Merman, and of course nobody could hear for a week. Good morning, honey, you're a stranger that can't... Oh, Jesus. You know, she was married to Ernie Borgnine for 35 minutes because they had the wedding, they had a few drinks, and in the morning, she leans over to Borgnine and says, Bonnie, you're a... He said, I'm out of here, and it was over. The marriage was over. We had Burt Lancaster, we had Jimmy Durante, Jimmy Cagney, we had Bogart, Betty Grable, Harry James, oh my God, on and on and on. Ann Rutherford, Rhonda Fleming, Steve Forrest, Steve Allen, Steve Reed, Steve Ruckus, Steve Berman, and the Berman brothers. We had some great people. My mom and dad, my dad was on with me. My mom couldn't get on. I said, we don't need a conductor. I got a conductor. I don't need a piano player. I got a piano player. So my dad was on the show. As a matter of fact, the routine that I ran on the telethon this year was my father, my son, and myself. We did Sonny Boy, but that was from a special that I did for Oldsmobile. They weren't thrilled with me either because I was driving a Rolls Royce. We had creative control as long as we didn't get to force majeure. As long as we didn't get into areas that were really, really sensitive. And I didn't want to do that. And I would nip it in the bud before it ever got to the network. Standards and practices and all of the people watching what's going out on television at that time, it was very tenuous. It was very, very... First of all, you can't, humor and seriousness don't get together very well for television. They were happy about everything we did unless we got into a political thing or something that was a little blue, and we didn't do that. So we didn't really have many problems with them. I did live commercials. We did it once. We did a live commercial. Once. And the mistake came. Dean did the setup. Colgate is the most marvelous, most wonderful. Don't you agree, Jer? Yes. Brush your teeth with Ajax. La-da-da-da-da. And that was that. Okay? We got calls in the morning. We will not be doing live commercials anymore. We can't trust that crazy bastard, and that was that. Well, we were tired. We were really tired. We were working so hard. And we couldn't give it the same energy and the same pizzazz that we did at the beginning. And we were now working. I mean, we were doing 2 films a year. Each film was a 10-week proposition. It's 20 weeks of 2 films. We were doing the Copa for 4 weeks, and we were getting very tired, plus the fact we didn't want to burn out. So we just walked away from it. And it's interesting because Ed Wynn was getting very tired of it, and so was Cantor.